Why are bread jokes always funny?
Why?
They never get mold.
Hungry Squared, bringing you the best food talk anywhere.
Welcome to the Hungry Squared podcast where the brain and belly meet. I'm Sharon from the Wasatch Cooking Guide.
And I'm Winter from theredparty.com. This week, you guys were interviewing one of our food heroes.
Salt and pepper are getting a divorce. That's all you need to know.
Let's talk about it.
Hungry Squared, yeah, Hungry Squared.
Sharon, how has your week been? Did you eat anything fun this week?
Yes.
What?
I went to the Cheesecake Factory for dessert.
Just for dessert?
Yeah, that's the only reason to go.
Yeah. Because let's be honest, their menu is kind of out of
It's
control.
overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. There's pages.
There are hundreds of food items on their menu.
And they have hundreds of cheesecakes, I feel. But you went there for dessert.
I did.
What'd you get?
I got a Godiva dark chocolate cheesecake.
Oh.
It was so good.
You know, you always think that I'm going to be able to eat this cheesecake by myself, but they're so rich.
Well, so as I was walking out the door to meet my friends to go to dessert because I had made dinner for the family.
And you're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Good
One
job.
of the kids asked me, he's like, so you're going to the Cheesecake Factory? And I was like, yeah. He's like, will you bring me back some red velvet cheesecake? And I just looked at him and I was like, So I was like, all right.
Why were you?
Because
Is
I
it
knew
'cause
everybody else would ask.
Yeah.
So then dessert turns into like $50.
Yeah. Because it's expensive.
Then Ike pipes in, I want some cheesecake because he's really sick this week.
Yeah.
So, and then I thought, well, I need to bring him cheesecake because it might make him feel better.
Yeah, it will.
And then the youngest is like, well, I don't like cheesecake. He just kind of looks at me like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, they have chocolate cake. Do you want me to bring you back a slice of chocolate cake? And he's like, yes. So I made a deal with the kids that they had to completely clean up all of the dinner dishes before I left. And then I would get them cheesecake. And I did.
Did they?
Yeah.
Good job.
So there's more than enough at my house right now to share. And so we made them split the eating of the cheesecake into days.
Oh.
So basically,
that is brilliant.
Yeah. We've got dessert for days at our house.
That is brilliant. Because it is so rich. And they are good.
They really good.
They really do a good job there.
Oh. What'd you eat this week?
So this week I went to a cooking class.
Oh.
It was a knife skills class because you guys, let's be honest, I am pretty bad with a knife. I am slower than mud. I'm just not very efficient with it. I mean, I don't have that rocking motion thing down.
Oh yeah.
I don't have it. So I decided to take this class at one of our local grocery stores. It's a really nice grocery store. It's called Harmon's, and they have usually a nice cooking area, kitchen type thing.
They've got a fully equipped.
It's great.
State-of-the-art kitchen.
It's lovely. So I went to this class, and the cool thing, I just want to plug their cooking classes because of the fact that for this one anyway, they fed you dinner and they told you ahead of time, you will get dinner, so don't eat.
Nice.
And then the other one is that then we're going to have a cooking demonstration and then you're going to cut up vegetables for the rest of the class, kind of a thing.
Oh, so you get a cooking demonstration, you get to eat food, and then you're going to be put to work.
It's all hands-on work. And then you get to take all of those cut vegetables up home with you so you can, whatever, you got some mirepoix, right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then you get a knife too.
Ooh.
It was a Henkel's knife. I was pretty happy about that. That was nice. But the thing that I ate there, the thing that they made was lasagna.
Oh, okay.
And the lasagna was great. But the thing I want to talk about was the salad. It was just a simple, I know you're like, what?
Okay.
It was a simple Caesar salad. And the thing that made it so awesome was that when they are done with when their baguettes they haven't sold their baguettes at the end of the, couple days or whatever they have them out, they slice them up and make them into these little crostini type things.
Like a crouton?
Like kind of a crouton, but just in slices.
Okay.
And they were so good.
Were they on the Caesar
on the salad?
Okay.
So good. That salad was like, I just want to eat the salad. I know it was like there was handful of ingredients, but it was so good. With the lasagna, it was good, but the salad, wow.
Nice.
I know, silly as
that's always good when that happens, though.
Yeah,
like
the simple stuff sometimes surprises.
Yeah.
Surprises. So.
Side dishes can shine.
Yes, they can.
And now for the main course.
Okay, let's get down to our interview.
Yay! You guys, guess who we got to interview?
Hold on to your hats.
We got to talk to Christopher Kimball of Milk Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is...
You know, the nerdy guy with the glasses and the bow tie?
Yeah.
He's our BFF now.
Yeah, pretty much. So just a little bit about him. He founded, and you may know him from America's Test Kitchen or Cook's Country.
Mm-hmm.
Cook's Illustrated, the magazine. The magazine. And he departed from America's Test Kitchen last year, or in 2015, I think it was.
It's about 2 years ago.
And he started his own venture called Milk Street. And as you will hear in this interview is that it's a totally different ballgame from America's Test Kitchen. It's so interesting what he's learned in his travels.
It's a more global focus on different types of cuisines from around the world and how you can incorporate them into your kitchen. And Milk Street's got a podcast.
Yep.
Just like we do.
You got to listen to the one where he interviews Ziggy Marley. That was so fun.
So he has cool people on his podcast, and they have different segments that you can even take your calls.
Oh, yeah. So you can call in. Yeah. Submit your questions.
They have a magazine. Mm-hmm. They have a cooking school, which is really cool.
And it's located in Boston, Massachusetts. So you will have to go there if you want to participate in that.
But if you want to look up those classes, if you're ever in the area or if you want to go on vacation and do it, I would highly encourage you because they are pretty reasonably priced. Mm-hmm. And something special that they do at Milk Street is that they also teach cooking classes to at-risk youth.
Yeah. From the Boys and Girls Club, I think, of that area. I thought that was pretty cool. So.
And they're free to them.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
And I believe they are currently filming for a public television cooking, basically a cooking show.
Yeah, they have some other things that are in the works for this year that we were really excited to learn about, and we will let him tell you in this interview.
So here's the interview, and we hope you guys enjoy it. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful. So I'm Winter, and I've got my co-host here, Sharon, and we're so excited to talk to you today. Do you have a few minutes that we can...
Sure.
Okay, sure. Perfect. Well, so we have a podcast, and one of our first questions that we generally ask on the podcast is, what'd you eat this week? Can you tell us what you ate this week?
I've had many versions of authentic hummus from Tel Aviv. One of our editors just got back. We've been testing a sort of a new version of pound cake, a buttermilk lemon pound cake, a pistachio cardamom cake we've been eating a lot of. We've been testing a midnight noodle dish, which has sesame oil and soy sauce and scallions, very quick put together dish. Those are a few of the items.
That sounds wonderful. That midnight dish sounds really... Noodles. Yeah. That sounds lovely. Did you make any of those, or was that... Who made all of those?
This is all right from the kitchen here at Milk Street, where we do a lot of our eating.
Wonderful. Well, so just to get into things then, can you tell us a little bit about the mission of Milk Street? How'd you come up with this idea, and can you tell us the mission for Milk Street for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with Milk Street? That'd be great.
American cooking, for the most part, has been Northern European, particularly French and English, and it's a particular style of cooking that lent itself to the territory, the real estate, and also the ingredients. There was a lot of fuel, there was a lot of meat, there was a lot of potatoes, etc. And so the method was to take fairly bland ingredients and cook them in order to develop flavor. But the Northern Europe had almost no spices, very few herbs, no fermented sauces, no chilies, no ginger. So it's just a particular way of thinking about creating dinner. If you look around the world, you find that every place has a different answer to that question, how to make dinner. And all of those places have something to add to that discussion. So instead of simply using the Northern European repertoire as the basis for our home cooking here, if you travel around and cook with other people, not intending to reproduce anything authentically, but to get a cooking lesson and different ways of thinking about cooking, different techniques, etc. You then discover that cooking is a lot more fun. It's a lot easier, and you can get much bigger flavors by looking at other countries. I mean, for example, in Thailand, where I was in December, almost all the cooking is very quick, and the flavor is added in the condiments. You have very hot white pepper. You have garlic that's been toasted or fried. You have all the sauce, fish sauce, and soy sauce, and everything else. You have strongly flavored ingredients like turmeric and calico. So you have all these potent ingredients, and you can start with rice and broth, or you can start with a chicken, or you can start with the stir-fried rice, and in 10 minutes create something that has a lot of flavor. So that's the mission. The mission is to change how we cook by looking around the world for better ideas.
Basically what everybody else is having for dinner.
Yeah, I think the mistake has been that we viewed other people's food as ethnic food, a term I really don't like at all, and it puts their cooking in sort of at a great distance from ours. And it used to be maybe one night a month on a Saturday you might cook Mexican food or Moroccan food or whatever it is, right? Szechuan food. But if you get beyond that and stop thinking about it as being something strange or foreign, well, there's a million things to learn from the cooking in Szechuan or Canton, which is very simple, So instead of thinking about it as a once-a-month thing or as something not really relevant to how we cook here, like fashion or music, it's a mashup, right? I mean, this has been done for decades by other fields, and we're just starting to do it now with cooking.
So how can we embrace cuisines that we aren't familiar with in our own homes?
You can subscribe to Milk Street Magazine. I mean, our job is to go somewhere and say, hey, in central Mexico, when they make guacamole, they don't use lime juice and garlic.
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that.
They mash up the onions and the serranos in the bowl. It's actually easier, and it's better. So that's not hard to incorporate into your repertoire. Or you say, lots of places in the world don't use stock, they use water, because when you cook meat in water, you get stock. Or places in the world don't saute meat for a stew, because they want a cleaner flavor. Or lots of cuisines toast whole spices, instead of using ground spices, which gives you a much brighter flavor. Or a lot of cultures will take, greens and flash stir fry them, and then add some chili oil and some scallions and some ginger, and it takes 2 minutes. So it's not hard to incorporate these simple bits, these little sub-recipes into how we cook. Or in the first issue, we said scramble eggs with olive oil, not butter. Well, they do that in most parts of the world. They don't use butter, and you get a much better scrambled egg. So it's not hard to incorporate that kind of suggestion.
So what would you recommend then in order to incorporate these things? What kind of ingredients would you recommend having in your pantry that pack a punch of flavor, kind of introduce us to a different, just different flavors and expands our horizons, I guess?
Well, I don't think our horizons need to be expanded the way that they did 50 years ago. You can go to any town in America. I was just in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where one of my kids was going to school. And there was a Tibetan grill restaurant, right? It was actually really good. I mean, so I think in the last 15 years or so, we're all much more sophisticated because the restaurants are infinitely better. Supermarkets have, fish sauce and soy sauce and oyster sauce, and those basic ingredients are in every supermarket. There's nothing strange about it. And you can buy anything you want on Amazon in 24 hours anyway. So what's happened in the last 20 years is access to any ingredient you want is available to anybody. And people now understand that Mexican food isn't just tacos and burritos, but Thai food isn't just, pad Thai. And so I think we're much more sophisticated than we were. And we're not talking about taking 12 steps away from what we know. We're talking about, start with a brownie and put some tahini in it, and it's just much better because it has a slight bitterness which pairs really nicely with the chocolate. Or as I said, scrambled eggs with olive oil. So there are a handful of ingredients of condiments and those sort of things you need But it's a small list, and these are not, we're not saying you have to go out and buy sumac, or Aleppo pepper. These are things that everybody can easily get locally. So we're not asking for strange ingredients.
Just basic ones then. So is there, would you recommend a good starter dish to someone who does want to toe their...
Yeah, I would say there are a few. I mean, you can, stir-fried rice is the classic, right? I mean, it's just leftover rice and a handful of ingredients, and it takes a few minutes, but you get that mix of flavors. And I think that's what most of the rest of the world offers, more interesting flavors and textures. Sweet goes with savory, right? I mean, most places in the world don't have tons of desserts with all the sugar in it. They tend to use sweetness in their day-to-day cooking and savory dishes. The idea of smooth and crunchy, for example, or cool and hot, or spicy and sweet. Those are all things that are common to almost every culture. But not so much so here, because we don't have the tradition of that here. And so, these are not complicated cooking. In fact, it's the opposite. It's actually the cooking simpler, because you're dealing with a basic concept, which is more appealing, mixing and matching flavors and textures. And so when you take a bite, you have to stop a moment and think about it, because there's something more interesting going on in your mouth.
So a lot of cooks rely on printed recipes. I'm thumbing through a couple of Milk Street magazines this morning. And what do you do to encourage creativity in cooking and using creative license? Do you just follow the recipe as it's printed, or do you kind of veer away
in
from
the
that
magazine
sometimes?
we often pull out a Milk Street Basic, which is the concept, the theory there. So whether that theory is using hot oil to sizzle greens and blossom flavors, or the concept is you can use water instead of stock, or the concept is a pairing of certain kinds of flavors. In our cooking school here at Milk Street, the actual cooking school, we do the same thing. We have courses on flavors and spices. Or, as I said, toast whole spices in a skillet for a few minutes and use those instead of ground. So we're trying to pull out the lessons, give you a recipe if you want to just follow a recipe, but say, look, here's what's going on. Here's the idea. So if you want to improvise a little bit, you have the concept there. And I think that's really important. But a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people need a recipe. For those people who want to play around, we try to extract the lessons so they can do that.
What's your preferred method? Do you play around?
It depends. I've had some really horrendous disasters flying around. I just made a pizza Sunday I had to throw out. We had to order in. It was that bad. Because I ended up killing the yeast. So, sure, I make mistakes all the time, but that's fine. I mean, it depends. If I'm going to do stir-fried rice, no, I don't need a recipe. But, there's certain things for which you really do want a recipe, because somebody has tested the balance of ingredients in a way where at least the first time, you want to make it their way, and then you can alter it as you go along. A lot of people think if you follow a recipe, you're not a good cook, and I don't agree with that at all. There's no shame in following a recipe. I mean, if you are a classical pianist, you do follow, the score, right? I mean, you're not just making it up as you go along, and nobody would suggest, a violinist or a pianist or somebody like that, or someone who plays the oboe, is somehow lesser because they're not improvising. So, everybody, I guess, wants to be Jerry Garcia in a good night, but there's nothing wrong with following. I mean, I do, of course. That would be my ultimate job. So I don't have this idea of you're not creative unless you're making it up. I don't buy that. I think if there are times when you want to improvise, fine, go ahead. But I don't think it's a higher level of art than just doing a good job cooking. I mean, I would say that I've spoken to a number of people from other cultures, Japan, Vietnam, other places, India, where the approach to cooking isn't just about assembling a recipe and eating it. They have a philosophy and a mindset going in, and that, I think, is the more creative part of cooking. In Japan, it's the way you move in the kitchen physically. The fluidity to the process. In Vietnam, they have a phrase called "cao," which means right intent. Which is very Buddhist, which is coming to the process of cooking with the right state of mind. So I think it's that part of it that actually is the more creative part. It's how you approach cooking. Are you just trying to get to the end as fast as you can because you're hungry, or are you really involved with the process in some, I hate to say it, spiritual way, but in some way that transcends just the end product?
Sure, I found that. But what about, but I mean, I think I've experienced both ways. Sometimes, you have to get dinner on the table for your kids on a Tuesday night when they've got stuff going on. What are some of your go-to meals? Like if you have to prepare dinner quickly and you can't spend a lot of time, do you have anything that's like a go-to type meal?
Sure. I think, any simple noodle, often a Chinese noodle or Japanese noodle with, sesame oil, soy sauce, scallion, chili paste or oil, any of those ingredients, and you can add things to them, asparagus, whatever you want. But using the noodles and that sauce and some of the cooking water as a base is certainly a go-to. I think a stir-fried rice is a go-to. I think any rice, I make rice in a terracotta with clay cooker, and it's fabulous. And you can just have a bowl of rice and put anything you want on top of the bowl of rice. You can use leftovers, you can use anything. I think seared greens, when you put sizzling oil on top and just take like Swiss chard and do that, that's fine. You can put poached chicken or chicken on top if you want, a little soy sauce thinned out, and ginger and scallion. So I just think of the base, which could be a rice soup, it could be rice, it could be a bowl of noodles, and then just layering things on top of it, wherever you happen to have in the fridge is a good way of looking at it. I just talked to someone who makes a peanut soup. She uses shallots and onions and cooks them down for a little while, and then she adds some stock, chicken stock, and some peanut butter. It's a very West African approach. They use peanuts a lot. They don't use peanut butter, but and that's their base. And then you can throw anything else you want into it.
Those are nice. I really like that. I grew up, I'm Chinese, and so this is really a delight to read in your first edition of Milk Street magazine, the white chicken, the poached white chicken, because I used to eat that all the time as a kid, and it was so awesome. And I wanted to thank you for that. I mean, in talking and seeing where you have traveled, you've traveled a lot for Milk Street. And so I'm kind of curious, can you tell me maybe one of your favorite experiences that you've had traveling for Milk Street and what you learned there? It sounds like you have a ton of experiences. So,
well, Thailand, which is the most recent, was the most interesting. I think there's a culture there that is just beneath the surface. I mean, when you get there, people introduce themselves with a bow of the head and sort of hands up in a prayer kind of motion. And it actually is a fairly complex thing. It's, how much they bow, where the hands are held, et cetera, and how to respond to that is sort of the tip of the iceberg. And then you spend a little time. And I went to the house of Andy Ricker, who has the Pok Pok restaurants here in this country. And, there was a little tiny house shack there, and I asked what it was, and I was told it was the Spirit House. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, if you build a house, you're displacing the ancestors, and so you have to build a small spirit house, and, incense and food is left occasionally. So there's this notion of living with the past at all times, and that permeates, I think, the whole culture. And so you get a sense that it's nothing like the West, that there's a view of life and a view of ancestors and other things that are so different. And I just found that charming. I mean, just really interesting. That the past is right there in the present all the time. And that was really fascinating.
That's awesome.
But I think that's true in a lot of cultures, much more so than here, probably.
Yeah, in my in the Chinese culture, we definitely, ancestors are very a part of our lives. So yes.
Right.
So what's the process on deciding on recipes to share with your readers and listeners? Like, how do
you... I used to ask people what they wanted, and I gave it to them for leading from behind, I guess I would call that.
right.
At this point, I'm not interested in that anymore because I think we're at a point in the culture where people don't really know what they want, and I don't want to give them what they think they want anymore.
There's so many
So we
options.
sit
How do you
down.
choose? Yeah.
Well, because we're looking for recipes. The key is to find recipes that are not totally unfamiliar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to start with a brownie and add tahini to it, that's a recipe where there's a starting point people are familiar with. Once in a while, we'll do, something crazy, or you take chicken soup, right? But you can do it in the Georgian style, right, which uses egg yolks as a thickener and some other things. I mean, it's a different way of thinking about chicken soup. So if you start with recipes, sort of a pulled pork, and do a Cuban version of it, if you start with things people kind of know, and then you take a step or two into the future with that or away from that to give them a fresh perspective on it, that's really the ideal recipe for us. I'm not going to make a sauce that has 25 ingredients and 6 different kinds of chilies.
Right.
Because I don't think you can transpose the cooking of, pick a country, here, because the ingredients are different. The spices in Morocco are very different than they are here now. You're just never going to get the same thing. And the culture and how you eat it and prepare it is different. So I'm not looking to, as I said, be authentic. So we're looking for recipes that people have some familiarity with, so we can get a new spin or a new take on it by listening to someone else.
That's wonderful. So would you say your travels are where you get some of your inspiration, and then you take a few of those things that you saw and kind of tease it out with your team and decide from there?
Well, it's not just me. My editorial director, Jason Hirsch, was just in Tel Aviv last week. He was in Mexico. I mean, so there's a number of people traveling. I do think that when you travel, it's infinitely better than if you look at a book or you search on the internet. I mean, when he was in Tel Aviv with the hummus, it turns out that how they prepare hummus has nothing to do with what people eat here. It's totally different, and I mean radically different concept. And it's much better. I've been eating hummus for the last week, twice a day now, because we're fiddling with the recipe. But it's always served warm. It's not served at room temperature. They have much higher percentage of tahini in it. There's always topping, some of them meat, and other things. It's a very different thing. And unless you spend 4 days eating hummus in Tel Aviv, so that's the only way you're going to figure that out. Actually going someplace and being there and understanding why people do things. But it's watching other people cook and spending time with them that's where you get the light bulb goes off. I mean, if you think about it, if you really think about it, someone, I was doing a radio interview a couple months ago, and the woman said in the cookbook class, said, I don't really, it was a Vietnamese book, and she said, these books used to have recipes I didn't even recognize. These were all fancy recipes, right? But 95% of the people in my country never made that food. That was for the rich, or that was for whatever.
Really?
But the everyday cooking, the real recipes that we really ate, really weren't published until recently. In the last 10 years, all of a sudden you're starting to see like every grain of rice, Fuchsia Dunlop, for example. I thought those recipes reflected a much more practical, everyday version of that food, and that's what we're interested in. We're not interested in the fancy stuff you see in a 1950s book. But, what do you cook Wednesday night, And if you're in, if you're in Saigon, or if you're in Istanbul, or if you're Mexico City or New York, it's the same question, and it's just got different answers.
What's been one of the best surprising wins at Milk Street, like discoveries or wins that you've had?
Quite a few. I mean, I would say, oddly enough, the olive oil with the scrambled eggs is the simplest, but it completely changes the recipe. I mean, it's because the oil gets a lot hotter than butter, which obviously has water in it, and so you get that steam, and the eggs occurs very quickly. And the olive oil also, for a variety of reasons, is good at keeping the eggs fluffy, so you don't get that greasy feeling, and you get a much lighter product. And so that was because for some reason, a few months ago, I started making scrambled eggs with olive oil and just tried it. And I used quite a lot of oil as well, which is fabulous. And then we did some homework, and I found a Bass cookbook that did the same thing. And then, of course, most people in the world don't cook eggs with butter because they don't use butter. So, eggs and oil is 95% of the world uses oil, not butter. So although that's one of the simplest things, that's one of the great things. It is so simple, but it's so transformative. I think another thing, other things, big things are, I've been complaining about a sprig of thyme since 1980. I just don't understand what a sprig of thyme does for anybody, like in a stew. It's stupid. It's idiotic, And so all of a sudden, I started seeing recipes for handfuls. Handfuls of cilantro or dill or parsley or even basil. And you see, most people in the world throwing handfuls or the use of spices, which, in America, which has great food, but cinnamon and nutmeg, and black. Look, here's one: salt and pepper. That makes no sense. Salt and pepper have nothing in common. They need to get a divorce. It's crazy. It's like pepper. Pepper is a spice. It's like cumin or coriander or whatever. And so, there are times when you want pepper, but there are times when you don't. Salt, on the other hand, is obviously a ubiquitous, chemical that enhances flavor by sometimes suppressing the bitterness. You get more sweet, whatever. It's useful in everything. But pepper's, like in some cultures, you go salt and cumin, right? Because cumin is the thing they have on the table. But that's just an example of sort of crazy history where everyone has salt and pepper. It makes no sense. It's because pepper was one of the few spices available. It was very, very profitable trade. People got very rich on it around the Civil War, and it just happened to be the spice.
It was a marketing scheme then, huh?
Well, it was one of those things they could actually, there was a big secret about which islands grew it, and they'd finally make these deals. And some of these guys some of these ships, in dollars, not today's dollars, their dollars. One ship worth of pepper was worth up to $150,000, $200,000, which is millions of dollars. So these were very, very, very profitable trades, and you couldn't get big quantities of most other spices. The spice route was more in the Ottoman Empire. It wasn't up in Northern Europe. So that's just an example of that doesn't make any sense. Or stocks. You don't need, as I said. There are times when stocks are fine, but that's a very French thing or English thing, because you were cooking. Someone was in front of the coal stove, right, all day, and you had a big pot on the back burner, literally, and so you threw you threw leftovers and peelings and all, whatever, in the pot, and that was a very smart thing to do because you could boil it down and get a flavorful liquid. You didn't throw anything out, but that's why they did, and then haute cuisine came along, and et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, water's great. In fact, water's preferable a lot of times because you get a cleaner flavor. You're not overwhelmed with chicken. Everything starts tasting like chicken or beef, and that makes no sense if you want the other flavors to come out. The white cooked chicken, for example, as with the scallions and ginger in the water, you get this great stock.
Oh, it's amazing.
Clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so you didn't need to start with stock.
That is. Thank you so much for kind of talking about that, because that was very interesting. So we don't want to keep you so much longer, but we did have a couple of questions from our listeners. And one person asked, what is your ultimate favorite food, and what's a food that you really don't prefer or care for?
Shad roe. Kidneys and shad roe would be right at the bottom of my list, both of them. Rognon de veau, and I don't. My mother used to love shad roe. I never understood it. She always said it was nutty. They said you're nuts. Yeah, okay, great. And kidneys I don't get. Sweetbreads I like, but kidneys I don't get. I used to have favorites like apple pie, which I still think if you want to find out if someone can cook, that would be the number one test. But I don't know if because getting the pastry just right and getting every apple pie is different because the apples are always different, right? So
true.
Getting the right texture and a nice, bright, clean apple flavor without too much sugar, and don't put any spices in it or not many. That's a very hard. American pie pastry is very, very tricky.
So would that be? Is that the test to get into working at Milk Street?
If I were designing the test, yes. We do have pastry. You do have to do a blind bake crust, yes, which is very hard to do. I don't think I do. I think it isn't so much a recipe. It's when you go into the kitchen and it's exciting. It's not the recipe. It's the as I said earlier, it's the approach. So when I'm in a good mood and I'm happy, and I'm cooking something I'm excited about, that's my favorite food. When there's something I really enjoy doing it. Because it's never about the food. It's about the cooking, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's the cooking.
So what do we have to look forward this year with Milk Street?
We'll start filming our show next week. That comes out in September on public television, Milk Street.
Awesome.
The cookbook is coming out in September with Little Brown. We're just finishing that up now.
That's exciting.
What's the focus of the cookbook?
What is what?
What's the focus of the cookbook?
It's basically not an introduction to Milk Street, but it's our way of cooking in 140 recipes, which just, we're taking recipes and trying to rethink by looking around the world the best techniques, etc. So it's our opening shot at saying, let's change the way we cook. Let's stop cooking the old way and let's start rethinking what we're doing, which incorporates, some of what we were doing. It's just a fresh take on how to cook, really. The website launches in April. We'll have that up and running. The cooking school is already up and running. We have a cooking school right here on Milk Street in Boston. And we have a 10-city tour coming up starting next September.
Ooh, when are you guys announcing what towns, cities you're going to?
We should be finished end of March. We should probably we have the cities now. We're just booking the venues, and we'll be ready by April to announce that.
Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah, because we had one of our listeners ask if you were ever going to take Milk Street on the road, and so we'll have to let them know.
So I can stand on stage for 2 hours and make a complete fool of myself. That's my favorite thing. That's part of the experience.
So when you do get up on the stage, is it going to be a stage show? How is that going to be formatted?
I've done this. I did it last fall. It's a totally different show this fall, but I've been doing them for a few years, and I've learned the hard way what works and what doesn't. I think the audience is there to participate in the show, and so I try to get as much time with the audience as I can. I get them to taste things. I get some of them to come up on stage. We do some cooking, quiz, whatever. But it's an evening together where we can have that dialogue and have some fun. So it's not just a lecture or a serious cooking school. People want to be entertained and they want to be part of the entertainment.
I can't wait to find a show near us. You're probably not coming to Salt Lake City, but, Denver or Vegas or San Francisco.
Or I might come to Denver. I haven't been to Denver in quite a few years. I think that may be on the list, actually.
Nice. Well, so in the last year, how many frequent flyer miles do you have?
I have no idea. A lot. Well, flying to Thailand, I probably got quite a few, 15 hours to Guangzhou, you probably get a lot of frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I'm sure you do. Chris, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We have one last kind of silly question, and the question is, how many bow ties do you have?
I don't, at least 100.
That's
I've been wearing them for 35 years now or something. Well, you can't be in the kitchen with a tie. First of all, that's not going to work, right? Sure. I don't know. He's a friend of mine, actually, back in the 1970s, always wore bow ties. And that was about the time I started Cook's Magazine in 1980, and so bow tie just made a lot more sense around a kitchen. I mean, assuming any neckwear makes any sense in the kitchen at all, which is another issue entirely. But, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Someone actually sent me to Twitter recently, remember the old, probably don't, but Mr. Peabody, remember there was an old...
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Peabody had a bow tie on. Yeah, so that should be my mascot, I guess.
There you go.
Glasses and a bow tie.
Well, thanks for talking to us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
We're so excited for everything you are doing, and we appreciate your time again. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Let's have a food fight.
Food fight, food fight, food fight, food fight. It's winter.
This is a segment where you can email us with your relationship questions relating to food. You can email us at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
Disclaimer, we are in no way professional relationship experts, but you should totally listen to us anyway. If you need professional help, please seek it out.
Food fight, food fight, food fight. The food fight segment of the show. Here we go.
Okay, so Sharon, I think you have the question this week.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Hi, Hungry Squared ladies.
Hey.
I'd like to get my children, both younger and older, to start cooking. They already help with meal planning, so I want to take it to the next step. Any suggestions you have would be greatly appreciated.
Ooh.
Thank you, Anxious Mom.
Anxious mom. Anxious mom. Good job for trying to teach your kids.
Yeah.
So she said she had...
Life skills.
Yeah,
This is
seriously.
good.
This is dang good. She said that she had older and younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So maybe...
There's a parenthetical note that says they age and range from 4 to teen.
Oh, okay.
So she's got younger and older.
That is definitely a range.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? Okay. So I have one that is 2 years old in my home.
Do you teach her?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, because she's little, she's just interested in things that I'm doing.
Sure.
So when I'm cooking something, when I'm baking, whenever I'm doing something in the kitchen, heck, she even helps with dishes. I have her pull up a chair and she stands next to me.
Nice.
And she helps me. And she doesn't understand everything. She's just involved and in helping. She wants to mix. She wants to pour. She wants to see what's inside the pot. And so when she says up, so she can see what's boiling on the stovetop, I bring her up so she can see.
Yeah.
So I think for little kids, it makes sense just to get them involved. I know it's going to be messy. Like, just understand that.
You have to go in with a lot of patience.
Yeah, it's going to be messy. So just understand that. And it's maybe not going to be the exact most thing, but so maybe don't make French macarons or something like that. That need a little bit more finesse, I guess.
Finesse and perfection.
Yeah, or something. But do something that, heck, cookies are so easy. I feel like you can't screw those up, right? Chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if they want to help grate a carrot. I mean, there's things that the little ones can do that it might make a mess, but it's good for them to, I feel like, be in the kitchen early so they're not scared of it.
I agree. I think I've talked about this before, that my brother and I helped.
Oh, yeah.
We took turns, but my mom honestly did not trust me with the stove until I was old. She thought
old?
Old.
Like as in
teen.
Oh, okay.
I think she thought I was going to burn the house down. And we we didn't even have a gas stove, so I don't know how she thought that was going to happen. But I think it's good for kids at a younger age to just get used to being in there and knowing how things work and stuff. Even if they're just there for a second. I think that's a good place to start, is just having them do maybe 1 or 2 small tasks to help get dinner started, or, give them okay, I need you to heat up this soup, or, these canned vegetables, or, it's your job to stir this on the stove or something like that, or you're going to get the salad ready tonight.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yes. Dinners, I think, is fun when it's a family affair.
Yeah.
Or just making something. There's something, I mean, like Chris said in his interviews, the way you approach your cooking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think
that's the fun part about it.
Yeah, that's the fun part. So if you just kind of approach it that way, your kids are part of this, then
you have more time with them and more fun with them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the super important, conversation around the dinner table that night. How was your day? We're going to talk and really connect, but you can connect with them while you're cooking too.
So what do you think about, teenagers, right?
Yeah.
That might be a little trickier to convince them to help. So what do you think? Are you involving them? Are you giving them a chore in a sense when you're cooking?
I mean, I think that's totally fine to do. With Ike's kids, you have to talk to them before you give them an assignment. If you spring something on them, they get, you get more pushback.
Yeah, totally.
When you just say, oh, hey, and today we're doing this brand new thing.
Yeah.
And you have to do it this way or whatever. You kind of have to give them some notice, hey, the weekend is coming and on Saturday we're going to be cleaning the house. Just a heads up.
So they have time to process it.
Right. So they can just wrap their head around it and be like,
okay.
All right.
I guess so.
And then they're totally cheerful about it. Come Saturday morning and you're like, hey, remember how we're going to clean? They're like, oh, okay.
That's good. So a little fair warning.
Yeah. So we give them fair warning and kind of start them out slow.
Oh, yeah.
It's when they're teenagers, it's you assume that they know so much because there's so much of them that act like an adult.
Yeah.
But their brains aren't quite fully developed yet, but they're almost there.
Yeah.
And so you just assume that they know a lot of the same things that you do, or they know what you're talking about when you say certain things, like terms and things like that. And sometimes they don't, you know, so you kind of have to get them to
open up and say that
repeat
they don't.
back to you, like, hey, what do you understand this to be? You know, whatever it is. But
because I was going to say,
when
like,
I tell you to dice something.
Yeah, I was going to say,
like
some of those terms are foreign to people.
Yeah. So I'll just say, cut this into equal pieces that are about that big, and I'll show them with my hands, you know.
Okay. So explaining it a little bit more, and don't assume that they kind of understand. Because let's be honest, cooking terminology is kind of foreign to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's not a bad idea to describe and give descriptions of what you want them to do. I think that's a great idea.
Just break it down into something that's a lot more understandable.
Yeah.
Like Noah just recently learned how to use a knife. And so, you know, he's got his own chef's knife now, and that's really cool. But, you know, it's trying to teach the proper care of the knife and the respect for the knife and stuff like that, and the proper like way to hold it, because, you know, when you first gave it to him, he was just kind of like, he was using it like a butter knife.
Yeah. Totally different
like, oh, hey, no, that it's not a steak knife either. Hold it like you're shaking someone's hand. And then he's like, whoa, that's weird.
Yep, it's different.
But there's, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen when you teach them in the kitchen.
So that actually brings up a question that I've had about when you should introduce your kids to knife skills. Because once again, I was using a knife when I was really little, but apparently not very efficiently, because I was never really taught.
Sure. But I mean, how did that work out for you though?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I got it done.
I wasn't allowed to use a knife.
You're going to burn down the house, or you're going to hurt somebody or yourself.
Yes. My mom cut my meat for a really long time. Like a super long time. Oh, dang. Really long. I just really want really long time.
So because like Lee and I have talked about when we're going to introduce Lucy to knife skills, because she has a little wooden knife for her, you know, play kitchen or whatever. And we kind of try and teach her to hold the knife properly with that.
So one day she's just going to wake up and it's going to be suddenly sharpened.
Yeah. She's like,
going to cut her little plastic fruit.
No big deal. So I am kind of thinking that we might start her out with a little knife, maybe even a steak knife. They're not terribly sharp. Like and then just kind of go up from there when she's maybe 4 or 5. Is that too young? I don't know. I think that would be fine, just because we were talking about it already. As long as she's got good control and she sees you with it, and she knows where that, you know, she knows where it goes. It doesn't belong in her toy box. Yeah. Right? We'll be fine. Yeah. I think just doing things little by little, approaching your kids as this is going to be a fun thing. Just come watch and participate and be with the family. Yeah, I think that'll be good. But don't overwhelm them though, too. Like just give them, like, even if they're older, just give them some tasks, not all of the tasks. Yeah. And if some of your kids are a little bit more advanced and they're like all about the cooking, like you've got one of those master junior chef people on your hands, because there are some people that do. Give them all of the tasks. I was going to say, if they're enthusiastic about it, sure. I just remember, like, I grew up making dinner once a week, or once or twice a week. You did too, once a week. So I think it's not a bad idea to say, okay, Tuesday night, you're in charge of preparing the meal / organizing it so everybody helps or whatever. I feel like these are good life skills to have. This is great. They are. So cheers to you, anxious mom, for teaching your kids how to cook. Yeah. Don't be anxious. You got this, friend. Thanks for joining us today on our show. We hope you liked it. I know. Wasn't it so awesome? This show. We enjoyed it so much. You can find us at hungrysquared.com for our show notes, and you can also listen to episodes there, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. Yeah, you guys, if you will be so kind as to subscribe to our podcast, and will you invite a friend to subscribe to our podcast too? It just helps us show up on the charts a little bit higher, and other people can find us. And we're just having kind of a lot of fun with you guys, talking about food and geeking out about it. So yeah, thanks for being our food nerd friends and community. Well, we'll see you next week for our next episode of Food Nerdery. Okay, love you. Bye. Bye. Hungry Squared, yeah, Hungry Squared.